Thank you very much. Coming last gives me a little bit of inspiration on what to focus on. I have a presentation where I was starting to talk about the different types of macroeconomic policies that then push us towards structural reforms. And that when you do macroeconomic stabilization policies, they are much needed so that structural reforms and investors and everything that Mary talked about can actually come in. So for example, currently we are in a world where there are so many crises after crises, and therefore countries, even when they are put on a structural reform path, they are pushed left, right, and center just because they have to go back and reprioritize. And the political economy question that was, that was presented always comes in: who's gaining, who's losing, what is the priority now, what do we do with the social safety nets, particularly when we have inflation and we have a very tough geopolitical situation that is taking place. Another important aspect with respect to macroeconomic stabilization and then structural reforms is that when we're talking about convergence theory, we are trying for countries to catch up, but these shocks are pushing us more and more apart, and therefore the speed by which we need to do these structural reforms has to be so fast, but at the same time there are political economy questions that come with it. So this is just to summarize that we need macroeconomic stability. Again, we need to think about convergence. There are several policy trade-offs, particularly when we're thinking about those vulnerable groups that are affected sometimes by removing subsidies, for instance, which are needed for fiscal space, role of state. In many cases, particularly in developing countries, there is a role of state, and now trying to move out of that also requires a lot of work, and we put it under what was mentioned as structural reforms. There's industrial policy, and I will speak about the climate side of things, and then knowledge sharing, the South-South collaboration. What are the lessons learned from Indonesia, from other countries that over time? This, again, is what we learned from Maury Obstfeld, that inflation targeting, flexible exchange rate systems, fiscal cons, all of this is so much needed to be able to actually create a very convincing and credible story so that investments can come in, and therefore structural reforms have the lasting impact and are sustainable, and you can move forward. Policy trade-offs, again, how can we strike the balance between addressing immediate socio-economic concerns, but make sure that the jobs are created so that over the medium term, people are buying into these reforms and seeing that they are very much conducive. Industrial policies, I'm happy that I attended the previous talk, but again, so much academic research, so much in terms of examples, but there are the very bright examples, and then there are what we're seeing more are that the small marginal increases that are important, but at the same time may not do the turnaround as fast as needed to be able to overcome the policy trade-offs that we are facing. Then comes the idea of the greening, and this is where I'm going to focus most. For any developing country today or emerging market to be able to access finance, to be able to export to Europe, Egypt is a very strong partner for Europe, but again, many of the rules that are being put today means that industries need to reorient the way they produce in order to be able to export. And if we take a look at some of the gaps that are quantified in terms of how much money or resources are needed for this to take place, they are very, very sizable. And therefore comes a very important concept that was mentioned also, country ownership. We need to be convinced as countries that this is the way forward. And then when this is a conviction, political commitment is there, there needs to be clarity with different projects that you want to be able to implement. So here, this is again, in our case, we are very keen, have been keen since 2014 on the green transition, particularly on renewable energy. Egypt is very rich with wind and solar. We have, again, a very proximate partner, which is Europe, that needs this type of energy. For instance, the share of green projects and public investments went up from 15% to 50% this fiscal year. There are strategies related to enabling the business environment, accessing well-connected service land to be able to invite investors to come in there, and then some of the work we're doing with the World Bank and other IFIs to be able to push that forward. There's something on tourism, since I was Minister of Tourism before, and there was some talk about this being the practitioners' panel, and thank you for adding that on the agenda. But again, one of the key sectors that are being discussed globally today, and that you need to do different reforms in order to, and it's a very high labor-intensive sector, and therefore the jobs that can be created. Role of state, but let me go to the renewable energy, because this is, again, I think, a nice way to conclude. Indonesia and other countries have the G7 initiative, which is the Just Energy Transition Platforms, JETPs. Egypt hosted COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in November 2022. And in preparation for COP27, I wanted to be a JETP country. So I called the G7. I said, you know, I want to be able to access financing to do the green transition. They said, but you don't use coal. And this is for countries that are using coal intensively, so we want them to move out. So I said, okay, we can create our own country platform, a country platform where it's based on very clear commitment from the government when it comes to our NDCs. We will be very clear with the set of projects that we want financing for, and we have credibility with the different MDBs. So this is where we put together Egypt's country platform for the nexus of water, food, and energy, the NWAFI program. And NWAFI in Arabic means fulfilling pledges. And COP27 was from pledges to implementation. So the word in Arabic has a meaning. And the idea here was we're not only going to look at mitigation, not just the energy, but we're also going to put food and water, because adaptation is important for countries, particularly in Africa, when it comes to water security as well as food security. And then, because the just transition is so important, you need to provide the financing, the grants, the debt swaps, the concessional finance, the de-risking that the private sector needs to be able to invest in these projects. And therefore comes this concept that NWAFI is a country-led platform. The projects come out of the 2050 National Climate Strategy, quantified in terms of the investments that are needed in each project. And then the platform provides us with different innovative financing tools. We have guarantees, we have debt swaps. We have a debt swap with Germany for renewable energy. We also were able to mobilize concessional finance for several of the private sector companies to invest in renewable energy, be it from IFC, EBRD, and otherwise. And also the NWAFI program creates or provides feasibility studies, technical support, and also, as I mentioned, attracts different types of investments. The other thing is that the platform itself enabled us to bring forward our NDCs. So rather than having 42% of the energy mix in renewable by 2030, we were able to bring this forward to 2030. So instead of 2035, it's 2030. The carbon emissions that are saved by these 5 years are quantified, and they are related to the projects within the platform. So again, this was another example of platforms that several partners are with us. So we have on the energy pillar, EBRD is the key partner. When we say key partner, it means that it is sort of our strategic advisor when it comes to the details of the projects. On food, it's the IFAD, again, given the experience with the International Food and Agriculture Department. And then we have on the water, it's the African Development Bank. So again, for each of the different pillars, there is a key partner that, or international institution that is working with us. Some of the financial measures that the government has to do in order to be able to move forward, subsidy reforms had to be eliminated. This is when you are moving into renewable space, encouraging public-private partnerships, trying to efficiently use ODA and map each and every dollar of concessional finance to the different SDGs, particularly SDG 13, which has to do with climate action. Again, green bonds on the rise and very, very important. We have done that. Debt swaps, as I mentioned, and then carbon credits. How can we, as emerging markets, start going into that space, creating the different mechanisms for quantification, and so forth. Again, this is the timeline for creating the enabling environment. This process of renewable energy in Egypt started in 2014. We had, for the first time, introduced feed-in tariffs, and this opened the space for private investments. And then we go from 2014 all the way till Nuafi and updating the NDCs. Europe was mentioned earlier, and there is a lot of new opportunities with respect to the green hydrogen sector, but this can only, or now we can speak about that because earlier on we were able to invest in renewable energy, be it wind or solar. So this is some of the stuff I wanted to mention. Maybe on another occasion we can talk about the Sharm el-Sheikh Guidebook for Just Financing. This is a practitioner's guide when it comes to how we can use the different pockets of international finance and the different funds here and there that would help developing countries move towards their green transition, not just on the mitigation, but on adaptation, because we need a lot of private sector investment. And the view is that adaptation does not generate money for private sector. That's not the case. And we show, particularly in Africa, very important examples where that is possible.